Family traditions have a way of revealing who we really are to each other. For me, it wasn't during holiday gatherings or birthday celebrations. It was a warm July night that exposed everything I'd spent years trying to ignore. I was driving to my parents' house after my third year of college, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink. My hands tightened on the steering wheel as I pulled into the driveway, bracing myself for what had become an all-too-familiar performance. Mom's overly enthusiastic hugs that somehow felt empty, Dad's awkward pats on the back, the endless questions about my studies whose answers they'd forget by tomorrow. "Renata, my love," Mom shrieked from the porch before I could even turn off the engine. "You're just in time for dinner. And guess who's coming?" I didn't need to guess. Mariana, my older sister, and her husband, Gabriel, had made a habit of dropping by whenever I was home. It was as if they needed to remind everyone of their perfect life. Their success story, which my parents never tired of hearing. 2 hours later, we were seated around the dining room table, the fading sunset filtering through the windows. Mom had brought out her special occasion tablecloth, the one with the delicate lace trim that only saw the light of day when Mariana visited. The air was thick with the aroma of Mom's best cooking and Mariana's expensive perfume. "So," Mariana announced, laying down her fork with that theatrical flourish she'd perfected over the years, "Gabriel and I have been thinking, we should all go to Hawaii for Christmas." Mom literally clapped her hands, her wedding rings catching the light. "Oh, that would be wonderful." Dad's whole face lit up in that way it only did for Mariana. "What a fantastic idea, my love." Then Mariana turned to me with that smile, you know, the kind that looks sweet but cuts like a knife. "Renata, do you think you can afford it? Or should your big sister help you out?" The dining room suddenly felt smaller, hotter. I felt my cheeks burn, but I kept my voice steady. Years of practice helping me maintain my composure. "I can manage my own expenses, thanks." "Are you sure?" Mariana's perfectly drawn eyebrow arched. "It's around $3,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. That was more than all my savings combined from my minimum wage jobs. But there was no way, absolutely no way, I was going to accept Mariana's charity. "I'll manage," I repeated, gripping my fork tighter. Mariana dismissed me with a casual shrug. Turning back to our parents. "Well, anyway, the restaurant is doing incredibly well. We just hired a new chef from Italy, can you believe it? Authentic Italian cuisine. Right here in our town." "You're so entrepreneurial, darling," Mom sighed dreamily, her eyes shining with the kind of pride I'd never seen directed at me. "Renata," she added, as if I wasn't already drowning in her comparisons, "you should really take notes from your sister about business sense." "Yes, Renata," Mariana chimed in, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "Maybe you could work for me someday." Sitting at that dining room table, watching my parents fawn over Mariana's Hawaii plans, I felt like I was 10 years old again. Nothing had changed. The same eager nods from Mom, the same proud smile on Dad's face, the same feeling of being invisible. Mariana was still their golden child, just as she had been since we were little. 5 years between us might as well have been 50 for all the difference it made in how our parents saw us. The funny thing is, they were never deliberately cruel. They never outright belittled me or said pointedly mean things. They just forgot I was there sometimes, as if I were a supporting character in Mariana's show. They'd remember to ask about my grades, or if I needed anything, but their eyes always returned to Mariana, waiting for her next accomplishment to celebrate. Thank God for Grandpa Alberto. He lived in that big old house with the wraparound porch and the creaky swing. Grandpa Alberto was the only one who seemed to have enough love for both of us. A successful businessman himself, he had vowed early on to pay for college for both of us. But it was more than that. His house became my sanctuary, my escape from feeling like a shadow in my own home. We had our own little routine that felt more real than anything at my actual house. We'd watch old movies on his ancient TV. The leather was cracked in places, but somehow that made it more perfect. "You know what's great about Casablanca, Renata?" he'd say, pausing the film, his eyes twinkling with that special kind of wisdom only grandpas seemed to possess. "It's not about the obvious hero. It's about the quiet one, who does the right thing when no one's watching." Other days we'd order pepperoni pizza and he'd tell me stories about his own childhood while we played chess. The pieces were old, some slightly chipped, but each one held memories of countless games and conversations. He taught me to fish too, taking me out on weekends to the lake behind his house. I can still smell the early morning mist rising off the water, feel the gentle rocking of his little fishing boat. The thing about fishing, he'd say as he helped me bait the hook, his hands steady and patient, is that the best fish aren't always the ones making the biggest splash. Sometimes it's the quiet ones swimming deep that turn out to be the most special. I'd sit there in his fishing boat watching the sunlight glint on the water, feeling that maybe, just maybe, I didn't need to be the favorite to be loved. Grandpa had a way of making me feel seen without making a big show of it. "Want to watch Roman Holiday again?" he'd ask after a long day of fishing. "I bought those chocolate chip cookies you like." Those moments weren't grand or flashy like Mariana's accomplishments. They were quiet, simple, and real. While my parents were driving across the state to slip Mariana extra cash, I was learning to play poker with Grandpa, using M&Ms as chips. 5 years passed like that, in a blur of family dinners celebrating Mariana's achievements. She graduated college with honors, landed a job at a prestigious firm, and started dating Gabriel, whom my parents instantly declared perfect for her. Meanwhile, I was preparing for my own college journey. The day I left, Grandpa hugged me tighter than ever. His embrace felt different somehow, more urgent, more final. The scent of his old leather jacket and the peppermint candies he always carried enveloped me like a shield. "I love you very much, Renata," he whispered in my ear. "Never forget that." Trying to lighten the suddenly heavy moment, I said, "Grandpa, you're acting like we'll never see each other again. I'll be back for Thanksgiving." He just smiled that soft smile of his and patted my cheek, his hand rough and warm against my skin. "Just remember what I told you, kiddo." 2 months into my freshman year, Mom called. I was sitting on my dorm room bed working on an essay when my phone lit up with her number. The moment I heard her choked-up voice, the world stopped spinning. Grandpa had died in his sleep. The funeral was on a crisp autumn day. After the service, we gathered at Grandpa's lawyer's office for the reading of the will. Mariana sat primly in her designer black dress while I fidgeted in mine from the bargain rack I'd bought last minute. "To my daughter, Gloria," the lawyer read, his voice firm and professional, "I leave the sum of $100,000. Mom nodded, squeezing Dad's hand. "To my granddaughter, Mariana, I leave the sum of $500,000. Mariana's face lit up instantly. She turned to Gabriel, who'd been hovering by her side throughout the funeral. "Honey, now we can have that dream wedding. And there will still be enough left over to start our restaurant. And to my granddaughter, Renata," the lawyer continued, "I leave my house on Maple Street, including all its contents and the surrounding property." The room fell silent for a moment before Mariana burst into laughter. "Oh my God, Renata got the old house. That's hilarious." She wiped tears of laughter from her eyes. "Don't worry, little sis. Maybe you can sell it and buy yourself something nice. Although I doubt anyone would want that old place anyway." "Mariana," Mom chided without much conviction. She was already smiling at her eldest daughter's plans. "We'll have the wedding in spring," Mariana announced, completely taking over the solemn moment. "Gabriel and I already have the perfect business plan for an authentic Italian restaurant. This is exactly the capital we needed." True to her word, Mariana threw herself into wedding planning. It was exactly what you'd expect. White doves, ice sculptures, a 5-tiered cake, and what seemed like half the town in attendance. I stood beside her in a bridesmaid dress she'd chosen, watching her marry Gabriel in what Mom kept calling the social event of the season. The dress was too tight around my ribs, but it wasn't that which made it hard to breathe. Before the honeymoon tan had even faded, Mariana and Gabriel opened their restaurant. They called it Divino, divine in their words. The local paper did a feature on them, praising the young entrepreneurs for bringing authentic Italian cuisine to our small town. Mom and Dad framed the article and hung it in their living room, right where my college acceptance letter should have been. Meanwhile, I was trying to figure out what to do with my inheritance. The property taxes were not insignificant, and maintaining that big old house wouldn't be cheap. After crunching the numbers one weekend, I thought I'd found a solution. At the next family dinner, with my heart thumping against my ribs, I decided to mention it. "I've been thinking about the house," I said, trying to sound confident as I pushed my green beans around my plate. "Since I'm at college most of the year, I could rent it out. That would help cover the taxes and upkeep." The silence that followed made me look up. Mom and Mariana were exchanging one of their looks, the kind that had always spelled trouble for me growing up. Mariana's husband, Gabriel, suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. "Oh, honey," Mom said in that condescending tone she reserved for when she thought I was being particularly obtuse. "Why would you want to rent it to strangers when your sister and Gabriel need a place to live?" I blinked. "What?" Mariana set down her wine glass with a delicate clink. "Well, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Gabriel and I could use the extra space, especially now that we're running the restaurant." She smiled that smile that always preceded something that was going to hurt. "And obviously you wouldn't charge rent to your own sister. I mean, that would be ridiculous, right?" "Of course it would." Mom agreed instantly, and just like that, returned to her previous conversation about the restaurant's new wine list. I sat there, my fork suspended halfway to my mouth, while the reality of what had just happened sunk in. Dad was beaming. Mariana was gesturing animatedly about some expensive wine she'd imported. And Gabriel finally looked up from his potatoes to join in. I could protest, of course. I could point out that it was my house, my inheritance, my decision. I could remind them that Mariana and Gabriel had just received a hefty sum from Grandpa's will while I'd gotten, well, apparently nothing now. But I knew it wouldn't make any difference. They'd look at me with that mixture of disappointment and annoyance they always did when I didn't fall in line with their plans. Mom would sigh and remind me about family loyalty. Mariana would make subtle digs about my selfishness for weeks. Dad would give me that look, the one that said I was making things difficult for no good reason. So I did what I'd always done. I swallowed my protests along with my now cold green beans, and I stayed quiet. The following weekend, Mariana and Gabriel moved into my house. She sent me pictures of how they were updating the place. Grandpa's old leather armchair, where we'd shared so many nights of ice cream and movies, replaced by some modern monstrosity. His beloved fishing photos removed to make room for framed reviews of their restaurant. While I was studying for midterms in my tiny dorm room, my sister and her husband were living rent-free in my house. Whenever I came home during breaks, I had to ask permission to visit what was legally my own property. The irony was bitter enough to choke on. But something shifted that summer night after dinner where they announced the Hawaii trip. Maybe it was seeing Mariana sipping her expensive wine in Grandpa's house. Or maybe it was remembering his words about the quiet ones who swim deep. I threw myself into work with renewed determination. Between morning shifts at the campus coffee shop and evening hours at the study library, I barely had time to breathe. But every time I felt like giving up, I'd think of Hawaii, and it would push me to take on an extra shift. When Mariana called in late November, I had the money ready. $3,000. It was all of my savings. "Renata," Mom snapped, her tone sharp enough to make me flinch. "Family helps family. Mariana and Gabriel are going through a tough time with the restaurant. The least you can do is be supportive." Supportive. I mouthed the word, tasting ashes in my mouth. Right. Supportive. Mom turned back to Mariana, dismissing me. I walked upstairs to my old room, the sounds of their cheerful conversation floating up behind me. They continued chatting and laughing as if they hadn't just stolen my money and crushed my dreams. Lying in my childhood bed that night, staring up at the glow-in-the-dark stars Grandpa had helped me stick to the ceiling years ago, I made my decision. The next morning I played my part perfectly. I stood on the front porch, smiling and waving as they loaded their luggage into 2 waiting taxis. "Don't forget to water Mom's plants," Mariana shouted, adjusting her designer sunglasses. "And check the mail every day," Mom added. "Don't worry about a thing." "Don't worry about a thing," I assured them, waving until both taxis disappeared around the corner. The moment they were gone, something inside me shifted, like a key turning in a lock I didn't know existed. I walked straight to my car and drove to Grandpa's house. My house. Gabriel and Mariana's belongings were everywhere. Their clothes filled the closets where Grandpa's suits had once hung. Their pretentious art covered the walls where his fishing photos used to be. Their wedding photo sat on the mantelpiece where Grandpa kept our chess set, the one with the slightly chipped bishop that always made him smile. Standing in that space that held so many precious memories, I felt Grandpa's presence stronger than ever. I could almost hear his voice. Sometimes it's the quiet ones swimming deep that turn out to be the most special. I started in the master bedroom, pulling out suitcases and boxes. Methodically, designer clothes, expensive shoes, Gabriel's tailored suits, it all went into boxes and bags. I found their important documents in Grandpa's old study and packed those carefully, too. Every item I moved felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. The moving company charged me triple their usual rate for Christmas Eve service. The locksmith who came after also charged a premium for being a holiday. But watching him change every lock on my house, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: power. Not the cruel kind Mariana wielded, but something steadier, more genuine. I drove back to campus, arriving just as my friends were starting their orphan Christmas celebration, our nickname for the holiday party we threw for those who couldn't go home. "I thought you'd be in Hawaii by now." "Change of plans," I said, accepting the mug of hot chocolate offered to me. "But you know what? I think I'm exactly where I need to be." For a week, my phone didn't stop buzzing with Mariana's updates from Hawaii. Each notification felt like a deliberate jab in the ribs. "Living our best life." Read the caption under a picture of Mariana and Gabriel sipping cocktails on the beach. "Making memories with the people who matter most." Accompanied a photo of a sunset dinner. My Instagram feed became a showcase of their perfect, lavish vacation. Mariana lounging by infinity pools. Mom and Dad grinning in luau's. Gabriel attempting to surf. Every photo was carefully filtered and captioned with nauseating platitudes about family time and much-needed breaks from the business. The worst was her post about knowing when to step back from work and enjoy life. That one came with a picture of all of them holding champagne flutes at a New Year's Eve party paid for with my savings. Then early on New Year's Day my phone exploded. "Renata, why is all of Mariana's stuff in our living room?" Mom, call me immediately. "Dad, what the hell did you do with our things?" "Mariana, the locks don't work." "Did you change them?" Gabriel, I watched the messages pour in. My phone buzzing like an angry hornet. "This is completely unacceptable. Call us now." "Mom, if you don't bring those new keys over right now, you're going to regret it." "Mariana, Renata Valencia. Answer your phone this instant." Dad, the messages kept coming, each one angrier than the last. Words like ungrateful, selfish, and spiteful filled my screen. Mariana's messages became particularly colorful, peppered with accusations about betraying the family and ruining their lives. "How dare you throw your own sister out on the street after everything we've done for you? Mom, you're just jealous because we got to go to Hawaii and you didn't. Mariana, this is the most selfish thing you've ever done." Dad, my phone was showing 47 missed calls and over 100 messages. By mid-morning I'd read each one, letting their words wash over me unanswered. With every angry message I felt lighter, freer. They could rage and threaten all they wanted. I wasn't that submissive little girl anymore. I put my phone on silent and went to breakfast with my friends, leaving their messages unread and their calls unanswered. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel obligated to explain or justify myself to them. By evening my phone showed over 200 missed calls. The constant buzzing had become white noise. But when Mom's name flashed on my screen for the 201st call, something inside me said that was it. I answered. "How dare you?" Mom's voice exploded through the speaker before I could even say hello. "Do you have any idea what you've put your sister through? This behavior is completely unacceptable." Dad's voice joined in from another extension. I sat cross-legged on my dorm room bed, surprisingly calm. The old fear, the need to please them, had been replaced by something stronger, something that felt like Grandpa's quiet strength. "So, taking my $3,000 and going to Hawaii without me was acceptable?" My voice came out steady, clear. "That was different." Mom stammered. "The restaurant." I cut her off, and the single word felt like breaking chains. "Let me talk. For once in my life, just let me talk. You took my money I earned working double shifts. You let Mariana and Gabriel live in my house rent-free while they ran their restaurant. You've always treated me like I'm nothing compared to Mariana. Always. That's not." Dad started. "Remember my high school graduation?" My voice cracked, but I pushed on. "You left early because Mariana called about a job interview. My college acceptance letter. You barely glanced at it because Mariana had just started dating Gabriel. Every accomplishment, every milestone in my life has been overshadowed by Mariana's latest whatever." The silence on the other end of the line stretched, heavy with unspoken truths. "And then Hawaii." I took a deep breath, feeling Grandpa's presence like a warm hand on my shoulder. You didn't just take my money. You laughed about it. Mariana sent me pictures mocking me. Do you have any idea how that felt? To know my own family could be so cruel. Finally, Mom spoke, her voice softer but still defensive. Renata, you have to understand. Mariana and Gabriel are really struggling with the restaurant. They need help. And I needed parents who cared about me as much as they cared about Mariana. My voice broke, but I kept going. I needed a sister who didn't treat me like a doormat. I needed a family who saw me as something more than Mariana's backup plan. But where are they going to live? Mom's voice cracked, and for the first time I heard genuine fear there. They can live with you, just like they're doing now. Or they can rent an apartment like normal adults. I felt stronger with every word. My house is not their safety net anymore. And starting next month, I'm renting it out to tenants who actually pay. You can't, Mom began. I can. And I will. I've already spoken to a property management company. The lease is being drawn up. I hung up before they could respond. 30 minutes later, my phone lit up with messages from Mariana. Each one was nastier than the last, a torrent of venom that would have devastated me a year ago. Now I simply switched off my phone and went to bed. That was a year ago. I'm in my final year now, and I haven't spoken to any of them since. Through the family grapevine I hear things. The restaurant finally went under completely. Mariana and Gabriel are still living with our parents, supposedly regrouping before their next venture. Meanwhile, the property management company found excellent tenants for Grandpa's house. The rent they pay covers the taxes with enough left over to build a decent savings account. I'm careful with the money. I think Grandpa would be proud of that. Sometimes, usually late at night when I can't sleep, I wonder if we'll ever reconcile. If Mom will ever understand why I did what I did. If Mariana will ever see me as an equal instead of a convenience. If Dad will ever stand up for me the way he always did for her. But then I remember that day in Hawaii, when they were all drinking champagne with my money, and I realized something. I don't need their understanding anymore. I don't need their approval, or their love, or their acceptance. What I finally have is my own self-respect. You know what's strange? Sometimes I find myself back at Grandpa's old fishing spot, sitting on the dock where he taught me that lesson about the quiet ones who swim deep. The lake still shimmers the same way, and occasionally, I swear I can hear him chuckling over our chess games and those slightly chipped pieces. His final gift wasn't just the house. It was the courage to finally stand up for what was mine. To realize that sometimes love means setting boundaries, even when it hurts. That being family doesn't mean being a doormat. These days when I walk through my house, and yes, it feels good to say that, my house, I don't see Mariana's expensive furniture. Instead I see the memories. Ice cream and old movies, chess games and fishing stories, and a Grandpa who saw me when no one else did. Maybe that's the real inheritance Grandpa left me. Not just the property, but the strength to protect it, the wisdom to know my worth, and most importantly, the courage to swim deep, even when others are making bigger splashes. If this story resonates with you, give it a like so others can find it too. Sometimes we need to be reminded that standing up for ourselves isn't selfish. It's necessary. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and subscribe for more stories about finding your voice, even when it seems like no one is listening. Because trust me, someone is. Just like Grandpa always said, it's not about making the biggest splash. It's about swimming true to yourself, even in the deep. Because sometimes the quietest decision can create the biggest waves.